Welcome to the 2020 Denver Broncos preview show slash season record prediction episode thingy mobobber. Okay, let's get right into it. Last year the Broncos went 7-9, and the way I look at their season is that just their lackluster offense with their lack of weapons really hurt them while they had a top 10 defense in the league last year. Cortland Sutton is already a top tier receiver, so that's really good for them. I mean, he's really talented. It was really cool to see them implementing almost some option football plays without necessarily using the quarterback in all of them, which is really creative. One time we saw them run like a jet sweep look while having the man who took the jet sweep handoff also have a running back available behind him to pitch to. And then there was another interesting one where they had almost like a read option look, but after the read was done, he would either hand off to the running back or flip forward to the receiver, and it keeps the quarterback out of the play and keeps them protected while still running some option football. So it's really cool concept they had going there. They ended the season on a really high note by beating the Raiders to come in second place in the AFC West when they stopped their 2-point conversion attempt with 7 seconds left. So that made them jump up to 7-9 from 6-9. And like I said, then they ended up second in the AFC West, which before getting ready for this video, I did not realize that they were second in the AFC West. I almost would have guaranteed that I thought the Raiders were the second place team last year, but they obviously won that last game of the season, so that bumped them in there. Last year before the draft, I was a huge Noah Fant fan. And I have to say that watching this season, I'm still kind of really jealous that the Broncos got Noah Fant. He's a really good player. And I feel like the entire team just caught their stride late in the season. There's a play where Sutton has 3 guys covering him against the Vikings, and he still got open, which was very funny. And most of the stuff I talk about here is about Fant, Sutton, a little bit of Philip Lindsay, but they were the only 3 players on the offensive side of the ball to do much last season. So that play against the Vikings, and then there's a play where they run a delayed tight end release, like they pump a swing out of the backfield, and then the tight end runs up the seam, maybe like 2 or 3 full seconds after the ball has been snapped, and they're able to just dump it to him and get like a big 20-yard play or something. I really love that play design there. Philip Lindsay's burst is incredible still. I really like him as a running back. Also, there's a play where most of the time it seems like he's flashing his burst, but I think it's a 4th and goal play, and I think it's against the Lions where he takes the ball off the left side and it looks like he's going to get stuffed at like the 1-yard line, and his body, which for an NFL back is not huge, he twists and turns and churns to get himself into the end zone, and it was really cool to see that. Him use a little bit of power in this game too. Sutton's touchdown catch against the Browns in the front corner of the end zone is literally like, it calls me back to when I played Madden 15, and you'd literally have receivers running up the field, and I call it face catching, where the cornerback would go for like an interception, but the receiver would be taller than him, so they'd both be going to try to catch the ball, but since the receiver's taller than him in front of him, he just jumps up and easily catches the pass, and that was a really cool play. That was one of my favorite plays from the season from the Broncos last year. I have no idea why they brought in Flacco. I mean, that must have just been an Elway thing, and Fangio must have just been like, let's just play the veteran early to play it safe here for our team and not get anyone young scared or riled up. But Drew Lock did start the season on IR, so that may have played a role in it. But the other thing you have to ask yourself is, what happened against the Texans? Because they had so many impressive plays against the Texans, but it's just like, if they had been able to spread some of those awesome plays out throughout the season, they probably wouldn't have beat the Texans, because the Texans are a very good football team. But when things go right for them, that's what can happen for the team. There's enough talent on the team to play well, but it obviously showed up in that one game against the Texans a lot, and it was really crazy how that ended up going. I just couldn't believe. I remember that week of the season just being like, the Broncos are handling the Texans. What's going on? It was really a weird week in football. Um, I wrote number 11 is a great returner because when I was doing this, I didn't know who Deontay Spencer is. But now I do, and I'm happy to because the other thing is that I remember last time there was a good number 11 returning kicks for Denver, and I really enjoyed watching him, and I enjoyed watching Deontay Spencer as well. So I think he'll stay their kick returner next season. I think they've got a good player in him, at least in the kick return department. Maybe not his main position of wide receiver, though. Very, gotta say, very confident in Justin Simmons on the back end. He's a very good player. A lot of people like him. I like him, but a lot of people seem to think he's like one of the best players in the league right now, which is crazy. I don't know why I've been hearing that so much recently. I mean, if he continues to play like he did last season, then he definitely could get up there, but I was just surprised how early everybody was saying that. I think the Emmanuel Sanders trade made so much sense for them last season with the point they were at. I think it was right after week 7 and they were 2-5, so I think they were 2-5. 2-5 sounds about right. And maybe they were 3-4, but it was just like this season's almost kind of already lost, so let's just salvage something and grab a pick for a guy who's going to leave us in the offseason. So I think that Sanders trade made sense for them. The way the D forces turnover, it's not so the defense forces turnovers. It's really not surprising that this is a Fangio-led team. You like to see that. Once again, just so many notes on Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton is so strong. He seriously was breaking like defensive backs do not stand a chance against him because he's so big and strong that they're just they look so much smaller than him, and he shrugs them off like nothing. Um, Besides Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, and Phillip Lindsay, the offense really needed a spark. I mean, there's a lot of. I looked at the stats after this, and there's a lot of stuff saying that that's definitely the truth. Starting 0-4 really hurt the season. I mean, once you're 0-4, you've basically. There's not many ways that you can dig out of an 0-4 start, so you kind of knew where this season was going early in the year. Drew Lock was 4-1 in his starts, though, and that has to give Broncos fans a big, big, just source of hope. I mean, honestly, having a rookie QB go 4-1 is very exciting to see, and I really like what I saw from Drew Lock. It's just it was a small sample size, so you don't really know. Next, Royce Freeman had a pretty good year last year, but with what they got coming, I don't know if he'll even be existent next season in this offense. Just to really give you guys a stat that shows how much this team just fell flat on its face when it comes to the receiving department, is Emmanuel Sanders didn't even play half the season. Like I said, he made it through 7 games. And even then, in all those 7 games, it didn't always feel like he was on the field all the time. He did have a decent impact in some of those games, but it didn't feel crazy. He was the 3rd leading receiver on the team behind Fant and Sutton, so that's pretty sad. And the other thing is, the other part of that stat is Sutton, Fant, and Sanders were the only receivers to catch multiple touchdown passes last season. I mean, if that doesn't tell you what their weakness was last year, I don't know what does. I was really impressed by a player by the name of Alexander Johnson. I think he's number 45 on their defense. And I hadn't heard of him, but I really liked the way he was playing when I was watching him. That was really cool to see. I always love finding out about guys that you just don't hear about until you actually watch a little bit of a team. And then the sacks for the team were fairly evenly spread around the team. No one had like huge numbers. Von Miller obviously led the team in sacks, but it seemed like all over the defense, a lot of guys had decent sack numbers. Key injuries from last season. Bradley Chubb missed most of the year. That's huge. If they have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb at the same time, that is terrifying. That really is. Those two guys coming off the edge is going to be a terror for whatever team they're playing against. Also, they traded their fullback last season, Andy Janovich, and he was injured for a little bit of the year. So, not sure if you want to count the fullback as a huge injury, but yeah. Juwan James, tackle. He's been around the league a bit now, I think, but he could be an important player to them. So he missed, I think, all of the season, and then Drew Lock missed like half the season before he actually got in and started winning them some games, which was nice. And another reason to talk about Royce Freeman having less of a role in next year's team potentially is that apparently Theo Riddick is on this roster, which I didn't even know he was on this roster, but he missed like all season due to injury. And if he comes back, maybe he's a guy they look to get some receiving back snaps in for some reason. But I think the first two guys that they have now are really going to be the key running backs in this offense. Okay, so first, the team lost Joe Flacco. I'm not going to defend him. I'm not even really going to consider that a loss. I just thought it was worth mentioning that Joe Flacco isn't on the team anymore. And they lost Derek Wolfe. So he was one of those guys who had decent numbers last season, and he's probably not one that you're going to want to as much see go. Will Parks, a safety for them. He didn't really flash for me when I was watching him, so, I mean, Broncos fans may say differently. He was probably a decent player for them, but I'm not going to count him as a huge loss against them either. I don't think any of these guys that they lost will be huge losses. And lastly, they lost, for mentionable players, they lost is Connor McGovern, offensive lineman, and I don't know. Hopefully they'll be able to find a replacement for him. But, sorry, one more player. I can't believe I almost missed the most important guy they lost. The most important player they lost is Chris Harris Jr. And of course, he goes to a division rival in the Chargers, which you really don't like to see, especially for the Broncos' sake. But I think they got a guy at cornerback at pick 77 overall that they may be okay with putting in. So, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Or, if I wasn't an idiot and inserting this right at the end of the video, I would have remembered that they traded for A.J. Boye and Jarrell Casey, because I forgot to include both those trades. But A.J. Corner will be a great corner on the outside for them. I mean, he's a ridiculously good talent. And Jarrell Casey will play on the interior, and I'm sure beef up the inside.
Next, for free agent acquisitions, they gained Melvin Gordon, who obviously will be an important part in this offense. He'll be either the one or two. Him and Lindsey will probably split carries, and I really like that idea. Just adding Melvin Gordon alone already gives them another weapon on offense that is extremely necessary just because of how lackluster it was last year. They need a spark. Melvin Gordon will help that. Next, Sam Martin. If you are in need of a punter, it's always good to get a name in the building for a punter that is recognizable. So Sam Martin's a recognizable name. I like that signing. Jeff Driscoll came in for quarterback. I really like Driscoll as a backup quarterback, so I think that's a good signing, and I think he could beat out Brandon Allen. If Drew Lock is the starter, then I like Jeff Driscoll as the backup. And they signed another offensive lineman, Graham Glasgow. So, between him, Juwan James coming back, hopefully one of them can replace McGovern. I'm assuming it's more likely to be Glasgow because I'm pretty sure McGovern's interior and Glasgow is also an interior while Juwan James is a tackle normally. So I like that guy for replacing him. So you'll just have to see how he does. Okay, moving on to their rookies. I really like this draft. Okay, so first off, in the first round, pick 15 overall out of Alabama, they may have gotten the best receiver in the draft at pick 15. Because Jerry Jeudy, if you watched him, he just always gets wide open. And if there's anything that a quarterback can consider friendly to him, it's having an open receiver. Jerry Jeudy gets wide open. Seriously, you watch his highlights, no one's ever near. I don't think you can say that's a knock on him because he's probably one of the best route runners coming out of... I can't remember the last time I've heard somebody's route running get this hyped up coming out of the draft. And I believe it. It's very impressive. Next, right after that, even though they picked a receiver in round one, they go a receiver in round two because of what we talked about before. KJ Hamler is a wide receiver out of Penn State, and he's shifty. He's a playmaker. He's a chess piece to move all over the field. You really like that pick. I mean, he's another really talented guy, especially with how deep this wide receiver draft class is. It just makes sense when you're in need of wide receivers to go wide receiver early. He's also a good kick returner, but like I said earlier, I really like the way Spencer returns kicks. So as long as Spencer keeps returning kicks well, I wouldn't switch him out. But if they need him, KJ Hamler could come off the bench and return some kicks. Well, not off the bench because he'll be a starting receiver, but in the special teams department, come off the bench. Next up, Michael. Here he goes. The Broncos drafted a lot of fun names this year, but Michael Ojemudia, I think that's right. First thing to note for him is that I appreciate the loose long sleeve undershirt. I mean, it just looks good. It's a look I like on some football players, and yeah, it. I don't know why I like it though. Like they got all these huge muscles. You would think like a nice tight fitting shirt would look good, but I like something about the loose long sleeve that looks cool. But also the other thing I like about him is that he's a cornerback, but holy cow, he's a tackling machine. It seems like his zone coverage was really impressive. But not only that, it's also the fact that because of the tackling, the other thing is he would have linemen try to get out on him, and he would easily block shed. Anytime there was a screen pass ran in his direction, he would blow it up. Like it was impossible to run a screen pass near this guy. So I mean, with what I saw from him, he really may be able to start on this team, and if he does, I think they may be happy with what they got. And was that a third round pick? Yeah, it was a third round pick. They actually had two more third round picks. They went Lloyd Cushenberry III, center from LSU. And once again, here's another guy that could replace McGovern. He was a national championship winner at LSU, so I mean, you'll just see what you get from him in there. I don't really want to talk about interior offensive linemen too much, so moving on. We got McTelvin Ajim, defensive tackle, Arkansas. I like his play style, but he may be a little undersized if they actually really do want to play him on the interior. And if they don't want to play him on the interior, they've already got Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. So I mean, he would really probably be not used as often if he doesn't play interior. So he may want to bulk up a bit, and then he may be able to play inside where he could get a few more snaps. But I'm not sure what they're thinking here. Next up, fourth round pick. Oh boy, here's another fun name. Albert Okwuegbunam. I'm not even going to try to say that again. If I got it right, lucky me. He seems talented, and he's an interesting prospect, but I think the real reason they went here is because he's from Missouri and he's already played with Drew Lock. So that's going to give him an advantage. So he may actually just have the tight end 2 spot locked up from that, literally just because he's played with Drew Lock for so long. Drew Lock will throw to him a lot in practice and make him look good, and he'll easily make the team. Next up, fifth round pick, Justin Strnad from Wake Forest. He seems like a coverage linebacker, but I really like his instincts too. There's a play against Rice where it's 4th and goal from the 1 yard line, and they line up in a full house set, and he's playing almost like a 3-4 outside linebacker role, and it looks like he's the contain guy. So since he's the contain guy, they show like heavy dive action, but the quarterback actually keeps the ball, and it looks like it's going to be a naked bootleg. But he just plays his role extremely well, and he's like, well, guess what? The quarterback is the only one that could be threatening my contain, so he just attacks downhill, and before the quarterback can even turn around and show him that he has the ball, he just blows him up in the back, and you love to see that. It's just one of those plays that probably isn't going hugely noticed when you look at the highlights, but it's just like he did his job and went with his instincts right there, and it was a really cool play. Next up, we have Nate Moody, a guard from Fresno State. Once again, this is another interior lineman they could try to hit on with the McGovern loss. I just really like the idea of teams bringing in a ton of offensive linemen and just seeing who can fit into holes because, I mean, I feel like that's the best way to tell sometimes. I mean, I don't know how much you can actually tell looking at college film unless a guy's like a freak athlete, but just bring in a ton of linemen and whoever plays well gets the job. I kind of like that strategy. Okay, two more picks left. They had two seventh-round picks in Tyree Cleveland, a wide receiver from Florida, and Derek Tuzka, a defensive end from North Dakota State. Wow, I'm glad I am done saying all those names. Tyree Cleveland, uh, I think he's the body catch professional. I mean, I think I watched him and I saw one catch that was made with his hands. I couldn't believe this guy was playing and being successful as like the number one or what number two wide receiver in Florida, at Florida, I mean, because it was just so strange seeing a receiver use his body to catch every single pass thrown his way at that high of a level. But he also caught a game-winning Hail Mary touchdown pass against Tennessee as time expired one time, so I guess that may boost him up a bit or something. I don't know why that would be a huge deal, but I honestly don't think he'll even make the team. And then Tuzka is the FCS version of Chase Young. He went to North Dakota State, and I'm not hugely in love with Chase Young, so don't think the name Chase Young means that I think this guy's going to be crazy. But he does get around the edge really quickly, and you like to see that. It's just that it's at a lower level, so you don't know how productive it'll be if it translates to the NFL. He could make the team, he could not. I don't think he'll have any crazy impact this season either way, especially with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. Alright, now the final part of the video. The most important part to predict what's happening this season. We got to look at the opponents. Now the easiest part of looking at the opponents, they're AFC West opponents. So they're going to have the Chargers twice, the Raiders twice, the Chiefs twice. I like what the Broncos did. They really looked at their holes this offseason and said, we need talent on offense. Let's add Melvin Gordon. Let's add Jerry Jeudy. Let's add KJ Hamler. We need weapons for our young Drew Lock. And Drew Lock went 4-1 with what seems like a pretty lacking offensive group before. So you think that's going to make this team a lot better, but I'm just going to start with the defending Super Bowl champions and the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think Denver is not going to go to Kansas City and beat them there. That's just not going to happen. Kansas City is winning at home. So that's 0-1. I highly doubt Denver is even going to win at home against Kansas City. Kansas City is just an insane team. Kansas City could have a down week, but I'm going to say 0-2 there. Now, these other games are a lot more interesting because the Chargers and Raiders are both teams that definitely changed a lot this offseason, along with the Broncos. So these three teams talking about them in a group is really strange because you've got so many variables flying around. I've already got them 0-2 against the Chiefs, but I like them taking both games at home against the Raiders and the Chargers. Now I'm just trying to decide. I like teams building around offense because I feel like recently it's been heavily offensive talent has been outweighing defensive talent no matter how good your defense is. I think I'm going to say that they're going to take 3 out of 4 games when they play the Raiders twice and Chargers twice. So that puts them at 3-3 after they come out of the division. I almost want to say that they could win every one of those games, but I think they have to drop one of them just to be fair. Alright, so 3-3 out of the division. Now let's look at the opponents they play at home. Let's see, do they have any easy home opponents? I think the Dolphins coming to town. Coming to Denver, the Dolphins, young team. They're starting to build up, but I think they've easily got that one against the Dolphins. 4-3. Tampa Bay coming to Denver. This schedule. I'm just looking at the teams they got to play right now, and Denver does not have an easy schedule for what they're doing, for what they've got to do next season. Tampa Bay, they've got Tom Brady now. I actually like the Broncos in this one. I think the Broncos could keep pace with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and outscore them. I think I would take the Broncos in this matchup, especially at home. Maybe you get lucky and it's a little colder in Denver than it would be in Tampa, and maybe that helps them out a bit. I'll give them the game against the Bucks because these other games are going to be more difficult. They've got games against the Bills and Saints at home as well. I don't think either of those games are. I think the Saints will beat them. I definitely think the Saints will beat them. I think the Bills game will be tighter, but they'll also lose against the Bills. So that puts them at 5-5 right now. Now they've got one game left at home, which will be against the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans are a very interesting team. I saw a stat about Ryan Tannehill that showed me that he had the least drop passes of any quarterback attempting at least 200 passes last season. And when I saw that, I really wondered, is Ryan Tannehill that good, or did he just get helped out a lot last season? I mean, it seemed like he was hitting a lot of open receivers, but if that drop rate increases a little bit and Derrick Henry gets slowed down at all, I think that hurts them. And I definitely think this Broncos offense will be able to score points next year. So I'm going to give the Broncos the win against the Titans next season, too. Then, here we go. Now they're going on the road. The road games are a bit tougher. After that put them at 6-5 now. But they've got They've got to go to the Jets, and they have to go to the Patriots. And like I said, I like this offense. So I think the offense will be able to put enough points on the board against both those teams to win those games. That puts them at 8-5 with, let's see, they've got the Patriots. No, sorry, 8-5, and they've got the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Steelers left. All on the road, however. Now, I really like what the Panthers did on offense this offseason. I think it helped them out a lot from the point they were at last year. But I'm going to say that the Panthers will drop to the Broncos. So the Broncos, talking from a Broncos perspective, that's good. They'll win that game. That puts them at 9-5. But I think going to Pittsburgh and going to Atlanta, do I like the Broncos in either of those games as much? I don't know. I think the Falcons will get back on track from last season because I don't know what was going on last season. But this is a strange thing because I usually think about the Broncos defense being dominant, but now with how this team's flipping on its head, you may like it to be a high-scoring game there in Atlanta. Now, I'm just not sure. I think for these last two games being Atlanta and Pittsburgh, I'm going to say that I want to say they lose both. Now, do I necessarily feel sure about either of those? Not really. I'm going to say that Big Ben is going to come back strong in a game in Pittsburgh will be hard to win for them. And I'm also going to say that the Falcons will come back strong in a game in Atlanta will be hard to win. So I'm going to say 9-7 here, but I could see 10-6 too as a real possibility for this team. I'm going to go with 9-7 though, dropping those last two to Atlanta and Pittsburgh. I really like the idea of seeing that Falcons-Broncos game be a high scorer though. I don't know if I actually got to the point there before, but that would be really fun to see a Broncos-Falcons game that really gets up there, 40 plus points for each team. I could see that happening. If it gets to that point, it may just be the team that has the ball last may win. And that could be a fun game to watch at some point in the season. So I'm going to say 9-7 for the Broncos and end it there. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.